Okay guys, we're ready for lesson 2.3, talking about writing two-step equations. We've solved two-step equations in lesson 2.2. Now we're going to work on the word problem side of it, where we're going to be writing those equations so that we can solve them. So let's look at the first real-world link. This is talking about robotics, and it's a robotic day camp, and it costs $700. This is the total amount of the cost, okay? And it says your parents are going to be making $400 in a deposit. They're going to pay $400 of that for you in one chunk as the deposit to hold your spot in the camp, and then you have to pay the rest, and you're going to be paying $15 of your allowance or your job, whatever you do at home to make money. You're going to pay $15 of that per week until it's paid off to the full $700. So what we want to know is, we want to know, how many weeks am I going to have to pay? So we made a table. Well, first of all, this $400 is the initial payment that your parents made on the deposit, and then you're making $15. Well, at 0 weeks, you haven't made any payment yet. That's just the $400 that's been paid. So we put a 0 in here because we've paid for 0 weeks. So 400 plus 15 plus 0 is just a 0, so 400 plus 0 is 400. When you make one payment, we put a 1 in here because you've made one payment of $15. So then you take 15 times 1 and get 15, plus 400 is 415. So now let's talk about if we made 2 payments. Well, we know that we have the original deposit of $400, and we know that we are making $15, and this is our second payment of $15. This is week 2. So then if you think to yourself, well, what's 15 times 15? If you want to, you can write it out over here. I'm taking 15 2 times, so I have 15 plus 15, which equals 30. And so 30 plus 400, I am now up to $430. So let's do week 3. Again, my original deposit of $400. I have made 3 payments of $15, so I have 15 3 times added together. And 15 plus 15 plus 15 is 45, so 45 plus 400 equals $445. Go ahead and figure out for the 4th week, doing it just like we've done the 2nd week and the 3rd week. Okay, let's go on to number 2. It wants to know, it will take a long time to solve the problem with the table. We would have to go on until we got to 700, and that's going to take a long time if we only go up by 15s each time. So we want to write an equation to find the number of payments you will need to make. Well, I know that I have the original $400 deposit, and I know that I'm making $15 per week. The thing that changed in this table as I went from 0, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, well, now I'm going to let P be my weeks. So instead of putting a number here by the 15, I'm going to put a P, and that's what we're going to have to solve for. And we know that it has to get to 700 because that's what the total amount of the camp costs. And then if I solve that, I'm going to go ahead and get a separate sheet of paper, and I'm going to solve that out for you. So I have 400 plus 15p equals 700. That's my equation that we just wrote. And you saw the same steps. Well, I'm going to draw a line down from the equal sign. That should always, always, always be your first step. Then I'm going to focus on the variable side, so this side right here, and I want to move everything not connected to that variable. So not connected to that variable is this 400. There's no minus in front of it, so it's a positive 400. So when I move it, it becomes a negative. So my 400s are gone because 400 minus 400 is 0. Bring down your 15p. And then I have 700 minus 400, which is a 300. Then I want to get this p by itself, so I want to move everything that I didn't circle or that is not with a p, and so that's the 15. Right now, since they're side by side, it's 15 times p, so the opposite of times is divide, and what I'm trying to get rid of is that 15. So I divide by 15, and over here I divide by 15. I'm left with a p on this side because my 15s canceled each other out, and 300 divided by 15 is 20. So I know that I'm going to have to pay for 20, and then you have to label it 20 weeks. that's how many payments of $15 I'm going to have to make. So the number of payments I'm going to have to make, I'm going to have to make 20. So number 3 says, well, how many payments will you make? We just answered that. We know that we're going to have to make 20 payments. Now let's go on to question number 4. It says, suppose you receive $75 in birthday money and you want to use towards the camp. Well, now I have my $400 original deposit. I got $75 for my birthday that I'm now going to use. And now I want to see how many weeks am I going to have to pay $15 to equal $700. So the only thing I've changed from this equation I didn't have my birthday money. In this equation, I'm adding my birthday money into that so that I can count that towards my camp. And again, let's solve this on a separate sheet of paper because that's going to change how many weeks I have to pay because now I have more money going towards it. So I have 400 plus 75 plus 15p equals 700. That hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that I added my birthday money in here with the 75. Draw your line down from the equal sign. I want to focus on this side, on the variable side, the side with the letter. And I have a 400 plus 75, which is 475. I can combine those because they don't have any letters with them. And now, just like before, I focus on the side with the letter, and I want to move everything not connected to that letter. So I'm going to move this 475. It was positive since there's no negative sign out here. So when I move it, it becomes a negative 475. My 475s are gone because a positive 475 minus 475 is 0. Bring down your 15p. 700 minus 475. Hopefully you know that if I subtract those, if you don't remember how to subtract, you're going to borrow. So this becomes a 10, this becomes a 9, this becomes a 6. 10 minus 5 is 5, 9 minus 7 is 2, 6 minus 4 is 2. So I have $225 left to pay. So now I want to get this letter by itself. So I want to move everything that's not that letter. I have 15 times p. I want to do the opposite of times, which is divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 15. My 15s then cancel out, and I have p equals, and 225 divided by 15 is 15. So now I'm not making 20 payments. I'm only going to make 15 payments. And it's going to take me 15 weeks because I'm making 1 payment per week. So it says, write and solve an equation to find the number of payments you now need to make. Well, here's my equation, and I now need to make 15 payments. So getting that $75 saved me 5 payments from my original amount. Okay. This is what it's telling you to do. This is how we solve a word problem. There are 3 steps. First, you have to describe the situation. You have to use only the important words. Those other words, they're not important. You have to be able to decide which words are important in the word problem. Define a variable or decide what you're solving for. So define a variable just means decide what you're solving for. The words part means that you're going to write an equation. So you're going to write an equation, then decide what you're solving for, and then translate your verbal model into an algebraic equation. So now let's look at the first one. It says 8 less than, and hopefully you remember that these words, less than, mean to subtract. But there's a catch, because whenever you see less than, that means it goes at the end of the problem. So it's 3 times a number less than 8. So 3 times any number, we don't know what the number is, so that's going to be our unknown, less than 8. So the 8 is less than that number. And is, the word is means equals. So anytime you see the word is, that's where you put your equal sign. So 8 less than 3 times a number, so I have 3 times a number minus 8, is equal sign negative 23. So there's my problem, and then that's what I would solve. Okay? More than means that you add. And it says 13 is, so right there's your equal sign. So 13 is 7 more than 1/5 a number. 1/5 of a number is just 1/5 times that number. Of means times. Okay? Let's do an equation down here and see if we can just write the problems. All we're doing is writing the equation. It says 15 equals, well, hopefully you know that you're going to need the word 15. That tells us where to start. So 15 equals 3 more. So 3 more than. So 3 more than means to add. So 3 more than 6 times a number. Well, I don't know what the number is, but I know it's going to be 6 times more than that. So 6 times a number. That's how I would write that problem. Let's look at B. 10 increase by. Well, increase by means to add also. So 10 increase by the quotient of a number and 6. Quotient, these are these words, that the vocabulary that you just have to remember and you have to know. Quotient means to divide. So I'm going to be dividing a number in 6. So I don't know what that number is, but I know that I'm going to divide it by 6 because it tells me it's the quotient of that. Is, there's my equal sign, 5. Okay, try to do number C on your own, and we will look at that tomorrow in class. Let's go to example 3. It says you buy 3 books that each cost the same amount in a magazine. Altogether, it costs $55.95. So I have 3 books, and I have and a magazine, 1 magazine. So 3 books, and those cost the same amount as a magazine. You know the magazine costs $1.99. Well, it says you buy 3 books that each cost the same amount and a magazine. So a magazine means that I'm buying 1 magazine. So I have 1 magazine at $1.99. Plus my 3 books. I don't know how much my books cost, but I know that altogether it costs $55.99. So here's the equation that I then solve. I'm looking at the variable side, so I want to move everything away from the variable. So I had plus $1.99, so I want to subtract $1.99. And then I end up with the $1.99s cancel each other out, and I'm left with the 3B. Equals $55.99 minus $1.99 is $54. Well, then I want to get this variable, this letter by itself, so I divide. Right now I have 3 times B. The opposite of times B or times 3 is to divide by 3. So I want to divide both sides by 3. So I end up with an 18 because 54 divided by 3 is 18. So the books each cost $18. So here's how much 1 book costs. Now let's go on down to D at the bottom of the page. It says the current temperature is 54 degrees. So right now it is 54 degrees outside. That's what it's starting off as. Okay? And it's expected to rise 2.5 hours 2.5 degrees every hour. And how many hours will the temperature be 84 degrees? So I know that I want this to equal 84 degrees because that's the temperature that I'm trying to get to, or that's the final temperature that I'm trying to solve for. And it says how many hours? Well, I don't know how many hours, but I'm going to go ahead and let hours be H. So now I know that I'm solving for hours. I start at 54 and it's rising 2.5 degrees per hour. And I don't know how many hours it's going to take for it to get to 84. But here's my equation. I'm going to go ahead and solve that on a separate sheet of paper. So I have 54 plus 2.5 hours equals 84. Draw your line down from your equal sign, always your first step. Looking at the side with the letter, I want to move everything not connected to the letter, so this positive 54 is not connected. So I want to subtract 54 from both sides. My 54s are gone. I have 2.5h left on this side, and 84 minus 54 is 30. Now I want to get this letter by itself. Right now it's 2.5 times h, so I'm going to do the opposite of times, which is divide, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2.5. My 2.5s are gone, and I'm left with an h. And 30 divided by 2.5, if you do that on your calculator, is 12. So that's how many hours it's going to take to get to 84 degrees. So my answer is 12 hours. So we can write that back in here. My answer is 12 hours. Okay? Last example. It says you and your friend, sorry, let me get my book back down here. You and your friend have lunch together. And the total lunch, the lunch costs this much money. That's the total that it costs. And it says your lunch was $3 more than your friend's. So you ordered extra fries. I don't know. You ordered something, but it was $3 more than what your friend's was. So here's your friend's. This is your friend's lunch. And your lunch was $3 more. So how would I show $3 more than my friend's lunch? Well, it's just F plus 3. So here's your friend's lunch, here's my lunch, and together they were $19. So how would I find out what those are together? Hopefully in your mind you're saying that you add, and yes, you do add. So I'm going to add those together. So I have an F plus F plus 3, because this is my friend's lunch, plus my lunch, and together that equals $19. And now we can solve this. Well, how many F's do I have? I have one F here. I have one F here. So I have two F's plus 3 equals 19. Okay? Now I want to look at the side with the letter and move everything not connected to that letter. So I have this positive 3 that's not connected. So I'm going to move it and make it a negative 3. Those then are gone. I'm left with a 2F on this side. 19 minus 3 is a 16. Now I want to get this letter by itself. So I have 2 times F. I'm going to do the opposite of times, which is divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Those 2's are gone. I'm left with an F. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So I now know that the F is 8. Now, is that mine or is that my friend's? Well, hopefully you can look at your key here, and F by itself was your friend's. So my friend's lunch cost $8. This is how much my friend spent. I can also figure out how much mine was. If I want to figure out what my lunch was, well, I have the equation right here. I know that I take my friend's total, which was $8, and I just add 3 to it because my meal was $3 more. So if I take 8 plus 3, I now know that my lunch was $11 and my friend's lunch was $8. And you can always check that by adding that back together. Well, I have 11 for my lunch. I have 8 for her lunch. 8 plus 1 is 9. $19. Well, sure enough, that matches how much the problem says the total lunch was. Okay? There's so much that you can do once you learn how to write your own equations. This is a huge part of math, and this is a huge part of getting to know algebra and being comfortable for next year whenever you go into high school. Whenever you get to a problem and you don't understand it, circle it. Go back through and reread it. Find the important information. Decide what things you're solving for, and decide what operation you do. Because this one said my lunch was $3 more than. The more than told me what I had to do. It told me that I had to add $3. Those are the context clues that you have to look at while you're reading these problems. Pay close attention to those. If you have any questions, please let us know. If not, then we will see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.